Welcome everyone. This is the intercultural communication, the mutual invitation process. I'd like to introduce to you Jessica Hernandez. She currently serves as coordinator of Hispanic Youth Ministry in Des Moines, Iowa. She also served as consultant and advisor to various subcommittees and groups on a national level to help form strong integrated communities of faith among youth and young adults of different cultures, as well as showcasing our universal faith in the context of different faith practices and traditions. She is currently finishing a Master's of Theology and Pastoral Ministry at Boston College. And if you read our website, you will see that she has a great message. We are all given gifts by our loving God, none of which we deserve, but we still get them. And this is Jessica's message to us. And go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Elena. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for joining. I am very interactive. I think you can tell somewhat by the materials that are on your tables. There are crayons and handouts and papers, so we're going to get creative today. I always like to say that I'm not here to impose and teach. I'm here to learn together with each other. I hope that out of today you gain a sense of better understanding, communication in general, but of yourselves as well. Learn something new about yourselves. I think that's part of discovering our gifts. So it's a small group, which is good actually, because we're going to be working in even smaller groups than we are even gathered here with the activities that we're going to do. I'll give you a little introduction of kind of what I think we'll cover today and what we hope to get out of today, and then we'll jump right into it, because I know we're on a time schedule and everyone's got other workshops and things to do, but definitely I want to create a space where we connect with each other, and I connect with you all, but definitely again learn something new about each other and the way that we communicate with others. Elena mentioned I work with youth, youth ministry in general. Therefore, I'm very attentive to the different subcultures that are within even our youth culture. Youth tend to be in cliques. There's different stereotypes. Different gifts that I call them. But different personalities within them. But they are also part of. Let me turn this up a little bit. Can you guys hear me okay? Is there a back tone? A little bit, yeah. Okay. Within the youth culture, though, they are part of a bigger culture, which is our U.S. culture here, in our country that we live in. But even besides from that, there's this other culture that nobody really talks about, which is, I call it the culture of illusion, which is things, right now in social media that are not necessarily, healthy or very much conducive and positive to just everyone in general. So I want to break that down today and try to actually see how it is that we're going to connect with others, not just youth. I use youth because that's a group that I work with, but how are we going to connect with others in a way that they feel that they belong, that they feel understood, and that they feel that they can trust. I think we all know that trust is a big part of communicating with others. So how are we going to build that? How are we going to improve on building that trust with others? But our society right now really thrives on telling people where they belong or who they should belong to, and giving them a sense of identity. We need to kind of break that down and give people a sense of identity. Well, in the work that we do in Christ, first of all. Because once they have that, then they're not going to be, thirsting for other people and other organizations and other groups telling them where they belong and who they belong to. So the first handout and little that I would like to have you all look at is the one that says Appendix 1. And it's Appendix 1 because it's from a book that it's called Building Intercultural Competency Ministers. And culturally, it talks about the different ethnic groups that we work with. But again, for me, it's not just about ethnicity. It's about age. It's about phase of life. It's about gender. It's about all those different subgroups that we're dealing with. So the first, just pointing out what we're going to work on. It's called the mutual invitation process. And what we're gonna start it with is just this mutual invitation exercise. And part of, what this exercise imparts is the ability to have respect for the space that we've created, respect for others in the space that we're created. And I know when people think about communication, instantly we think about marketing, right? Or just how we get our message across. We don't often think about, before that happens, we need to build some sort of connection and trust, even if we're trying to reach a larger audience. But how do we do that when half the people that we're trying to communicate a message with, we don't even know, we're not even gonna ever look at? So the only thing that we can do is work on ourselves and the way that we kind of reframe our thinking and the way that we process things and the way that we work on how we put out our message out there. But the first part here is reflecting on how is it that we ourselves communicate with others, whether it's in our personal lives and personal relationships, our relationships at work, and therefore, the relationships that we have with collaborating, in institutions and organizations with others. So we look at the respectful communication guideline. It spells it out right there what respect really entails in creating that trust and that safe space for everyone. My thoughts behind that, and we're just gonna go down the word. The R for respect, it's responsibility. But to me that says it's because we're the ones that really have the power and the control to decide what words we use, because that has a big impact on others. E, which is empathetic, being empathetic to others. It really is just about listening, because once you're listening, you're showing that respect. You don't even have to say anything, right? Just by listening, you're automatically showing that respect. S, sensitive, being sensitive to the way that people communicate is different from others, from each other, right? Not everyone communicates visually, some communicate more verbally, others even not using any words or symbols at all. Sometimes it's just even silence can be somewhat of a form of communication. P, it's pondering, so taking a step back. One thing I learned a lot was listen to understand, not necessarily to respond. We don't always have to be reactive, right? Our world today kind of pushes us to always be reactive, so we have to take a step back and listen to understand rather than just to respond and react. E, the second E in that is examine. Examining means, just your assumptions and perceptions, but also examining how could I have listened better? How could I have, what could I have done better in my listening posture than what, I've done in the past? C, confidentiality. This is obviously more in groups of dialogue, but when we communicate with others, we know that there's certain things that maybe shouldn't be shared or should, be shared at different times. But when we kind of break that trust, it's because we're automatically judging others by, sharing with others what maybe we were supposed to share. So it kind of just goes more with, just don't assume, try to just take a step back and realize what that looks like. And the T, the last one, which is what I mentioned from the beginning, trust. Authentic dialogue is what is going to create that, comes from trust. If you don't have trust, then anything that is talked about, any message that you put out there is not going to be authentic. And if we know whatever we put out there, whatever we try to connect with people and guide others and redirect some people to whatever our message is trying to be, if it's not authentic, people are not going to gravitate automatically to it. So with that breakdown and that overview of what that looks like, you're going to be in groups of, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5. We'll do 3 groups of 5. There's about 15, 16 people here. And you're going to take one of your white sheets that you have. It's like that cardstock, paper, just blank piece of paper. And I'm going to give you about, maybe 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. And I want you to think of a family tradition that has been carried out through your family, or one that you may have started on your own. It doesn't have to be a holiday tradition, it could just be any family tradition. and I want you to draw it out. You have crayons there, and I know it feels like a little kid, but this is, I work with youth, I'm a creative person, we need to have childlike faith, and this is part of it, so just humor me here. I want you to use whatever symbols you want. You can use words, you can use just, drawings, but something that shows that family tradition. I'm gonna give you 3 or 5 minutes, and then after that, we're gonna get into our groups, share that with each other, but there's a process in which we'll share with each other that, imitates that mutual invitation process, and I'll explain and give more directions once everyone's done kind of, just drawing out their family tradition. So 3 to 5 minutes to yourself, this time is for you to reflect on what that family tradition is, and what that will look like. Remember, you are going to share, so part of maybe how you draw it out and what you put on paper will be part of how you want that message and how you're going to share that family tradition with others. So again, 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll move along. Okay, so we'll just debrief for a few minutes, kind of just thoughts, what you all thought about the exercise. Was it awkward at some times, or what was good about it? What did you like about it? Observations just in general? Anyone can share? Yes.
Sure. I liked it. Really helped solidify it. Oh, thank you. I think it helped. Okay. I should just pretend like I'm talking to my kids, and then you'll hear me. Sorry, inside voice. I like that it really solidified our names, number one, but then having instant connectivity to each other, learning something about them that really is so personal, that I think all of us presented in our group with kind of great joy and fondness, and it showed that warming thing versus who you are, where are you from, what do you do for a living? I felt, I don't know, we're my team, we're the team, kind of instant connectivity.
Yeah, when we look back at when we communicate with people, the best relationships, the best communication that we ever have in our personal relationships or work relationships, it's because we do know something personal about that other person, right? So it's that instant connection. It's a sense of intimacy, right? That we don't always necessarily think about. And this is just a family tradition, right? And imagine what can be done with other things. So, anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, 3 of the 4 of us got cut off when we were telling our stories, and so I found that very interesting. For me, I'm an extrovert, so I just figured it was just me running at the mouth, but then 2 other people did it.
Yes.
So I think that also showed the enthusiasm and joy that we have in telling these stories, and just details were getting put in there. So that was very interesting.
And how sometimes, people aren't given that space to do that, right? Or as people that sometimes we're just so focused about conveying a message, we forget to create, that part of conveying that message is to create a space where even though you're also conveying a message, people should have a space and feel that they also have some sort of ownership or connection to it. So, yes.
And so I'm the introvert to Kathy's extrovert. I have to mention the fear that goes into it, the fear of judgment. When you're doing this, being judged for, how am I drawing, how is this story, how is it going to relate to someone else? So, I think the vulnerability side that goes into something like this too.
Yeah. And how, remember that's why I said, the person is allowed to pass. You don't have to share, you can pass. Because there are people that, I'm all right, there's nothing bad that I have to share, I just don't, it's vulnerability, yeah.
I thought it was interesting because I was the first one to go in the group, and I'm the only one that kept to my tongue. And I think because once we were comfortable, once someone else did it, I think other people felt a little more comfortable to open up, and so they were getting those details in and sharing those extra thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you. And again, This was more something of a personal exercise, right? To kind of just have those personal observations and how we relay a message. I think I heard a group up here say that just by looking at somebody's picture, they kind of already knew before that person even had to share verbally. So remember, even just that is another form of communication. And part of this exercise also is that you capture someone's attention, you show genuine interest in the person sharing, and you are building trust. That those three things right there is something that we have to keep in mind when we are trying to put out our message and connecting with others. Okay, so the second exercise is more, that was more of a, what we call individualistic perception of how do we communicate with others. Now we're gonna look at a collective perception and what that looks like when we're actually trying to connect with a specific type of group and a group that really has some of the same characteristics of a group. So the second exercise is, it's that second cardstock use of paper. You're gonna pretend that that's just a canvas for a poster, just a poster, that you're gonna put out there. And the message is, Jesus loves you. It's a simple message. I think we all can agree it's a great message. That's why I chose it. And each person though, we're gonna number 1 through 8. Depending on what number you end up being, corresponds with that audience, who your audience is gonna be for that poster that you're gonna create. In that poster, please portray the what, or just whenever somebody sees that poster, how are they gonna know the what that you're trying to convey, what is it about? The why you wanna tell people that, Jesus loves them. And the how of how that message is relayed, meaning how is that person going to feel, or is there going to be some sort of interactive, action or thing that they're going to know to go to as to how they're going to feel that message. So more the tangible of how they're going to feel that message. Again, I'll give you, we're not gonna go into groups because then we'll just keep sharing, out loud here. This one might take a little bit longer, so I'll give you about 10-15 minutes to kind of create that poster. But like I said, we're gonna number off, and the audience, keep in mind, the audience has a lot to do with what you're gonna use, what symbols, what language you're gonna use to create that message. 1 is men, 2 is women, 3 is children, 4 is teenagers and youth, 5 is the elderly. It sounds like we're segregating, but really we work in our society, in a world that we have to adhere to different people, in their stage of life, their age, and, where they're at in life right now. 7 is foreigner, I had a really hard time with choosing what that looks like, but, this is where actually we look at people that maybe, this is not their first culture that they came to know, right? Or that they know more than one culture. Me, I'm from Mexico. I came here to the US when I was very young. I know both 2 cultures, right? So even that in itself is a characteristic that I have that influences how I connect with people or what I gravitate to. So just keeping that in mind. And then number 8 is married couples. I just figured, at some point we also work with family ministry and, couples in general. So that's what that last one is. So we'll go ahead and number off again. And this one is just, the numbering is based on what audience you're gonna end up getting. So.
Any of the numbers?
No, just 2, I guess, essentially. We're just numbering off right now as in the row. So 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. So then the number that you got, that's the audience that you were essentially given that you're gonna have to convey that message to. So again, just do a little poster. Again, artistic is not, what we're here for, but yes.
Yeah, Jessica, would you tell us again for the people that didn't write it down, what group corresponds with what number, please?
It's in this handout right here. Yes. No, that's good. Yep, it's in that. Sorry, I should have. It's in that handout. It's exercise number 2. It kind of, in case, just breaks down the directions that I just gave. But then we'll come back and collectively, somewhat just process and share why, what was difficult maybe about trying to reach a certain collective audience versus, just having the freedom to convey a message just based on your own, way of communicating. Because it is different once you actually are given an audience and you have to think about the audience rather than just sharing because it's something personal that you want to share. So, 10 minutes, yes.
Is it a poster? I noticed it says down here brochure.
Oh yeah, I thought about brochure and then I was like, well, I guess I could just do a poster. So I guess brochure or poster, either one. And sometimes brochure, I picked the what, why, and how, and I was like, oh, 3, those little brochures. But then I was like, well, that can be also in a little poster. So your choice, brochure or poster. Yeah, thank you. So this again is like a drawing type of exercise. So anything, a visual that you would put out there for people based on that message of the Jesus loves you. It's a pretty simple message, and it's because it's simple that maybe it's why it's challenging. How are you going to convey that to the different audience that you were given? But that's the challenge right there. We don't always think about the differences in the different characteristics that each of these groups has, but it really does make a difference when you have to think about what those characteristics are in how you're going to convey a message and how you're trying to reach that specific audience. It might feel like you're, kind of just stereotyping and well, I have to think about these characteristics, but it's not so much about that. It's really trying to make sure that you connect with that group of people. I'd like to at least get a few of the different audiences and of someone that had either men or women or then children, youth. So let's start. I'm biased. Let's start with someone that had youth. Kind of, it's all. I'm always intrigued to see, what that looks like. And whoever got youth, raise your hand. And if you're willing to, I invite you to share. If not, then no. Remember, no judgment at all on artistic abilities or anything at all.
Okay, so this is TikTok, trying to do replicating a TikTok.
Yes.
That is a Jesus stick figure.
Yes.
So it's the @you with the hashtag Jesus, hashtag love.
Nice. Great. Good. Thank you. All right, we'll go with, let's go with, oh my goodness. Let's go with men. Who had men? Men, yes.
So I went really stereotypical, and I did Jesus with a hoodie, giving a thumbs up and saying, bro, I love you.
Okay. Good, awesome. That's good, thank you. All right, let's go with married couple or family type of reaching out to a family radio. Yes.
I'm a communicator. I do words, not pictures. So we've got a brochure. And I went with the idea of love one another, build your marriage on the foundation of God's love. And it will go on to say that you can that your love for each other is a reflection of God's love. And Jesus set an example of selfless love. And selflessness and service is a way to a happy marriage.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, no. If you all notice, I like how you were giving the message. Jesus loves you, but somehow those weren't the words that you necessarily used to write in your own creations, which is, that's the point, right? To take a message that you're given, an audience that you're given, and making it your own. What were some of the differences in how you felt from the first exercise to the second exercise, as far as, you know, the content that you were putting out there?
More pressure.
Yes, go ahead.
This was much harder because it's a more abstract concept, and how do you make it more easy to see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is more.
Mm-hmm. What else? I'm sorry, yeah.
Movement out from the self to interest in someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And that's harder always. Yeah.
More pressure to share. More pressure to share with a larger group versus that little group who I felt safer with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's an added sense of accountability or, you know, responsibility that you have when it's a larger. Anybody else have some last comments in between that? So again, the exercises were self-reflection, you know, self-observation on how one puts out a message, but just some last thoughts and what to keep in mind. What I think those two exercises show, the perception of how we look at an audience collectively versus how we look at an audience individually, so speaking about ourselves, influences, right, how the message gets across, and even our own creative, you know, aspect of things. So that's number one. Those perceptions also dictate the way that your group and your spaces interact with each other. So when we were, the first exercise, it was more intimate, there was more closeness. And this other one, you know, I heard abstract, it was kind of more distant, you know, so those perceptions that one has influence the way that that message is gonna come across and how it's gonna feel. So just always keep that in mind as well when you're trying to convey a message. And the way the dialogue that is also had afterwards, you know, when a message is put out there or something is put out there, is also influenced by those perceptions. So however people talk about something, or however, you know, the message keeps on going, or whether it stops, is influenced by those perceptions. And then last, those differences in perception and how we create those spaces, whether we're given certain instructions or whether we have the freedom to make it our own, also influence whether we're creating more division or distance rather than integration. So communicating a dialogue and conveying a message has a lot to do whether you're either bringing people together or creating more, you know, segregation and distance between, you know, what we're trying to do, which is actually connect people rather than, you know, segregate others. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, it's about creating integration rather than division, and whether the space that we create, how we create it, influences a lot of that. So my time's up. It's done. And yes, hopefully hopefully you had a good time, because sometimes, you know, we're running from one place to another, and then, you know, we connecting with each other. I said, you know, hopefully you learned something about yourself, and, you know, you were able to create those connections together, and again, just for future. So thank you so much for coming and joining us.